right. Good morning, everybody. How is it going out there? I want to welcome you to my Tuesday live stream. We got a new day and new time. So just want to welcome those of you that made it and made it to the new time. And just want to say thank you so much for tuning in. I'm going to be opening it up to some Q&A, some answering your questions. Anything that relates to real estate, go ahead and put it in the comments, and I will get to it. I've also got some questions that people have emailed in, or they have commented on my previous videos, and so I've put those into kind of a list here, and I'm going to answer those until we start getting some live questions. And so definitely excited to share some of these. We had some really good questions over the last week, and I know that we're going to get some good questions here live. So in the meantime, before we get rocking and rolling, if you wouldn't mind, hit that like button for the video. And if you're not already subscribed to my YouTube channel, definitely consider subscribing. I release 3 videos every single week with regards to real estate and different topics and things like that. So yeah, so just guess I'll go ahead and get started. Hey, good morning, Jeff. Good to see you. Oh yeah, where's everybody tuning in from? Put that in the comments. I do know that we've got agents from all over the country. We've even had agents from halfway across the world on these live streams. So it's always fun to see where you're tuning in from. So go ahead and let me know in the comments as we get things kicked off. So, all right. First question that we had, somebody was asking about digital business cards. So obviously, there's a lot of people that still, want to hand out physical cards, and I still recommend to have physical cards. But I do think digital cards are getting more and more popular these days. And there's a few different services. There's actually a lot of different services, but there's a few of them that I recommend. I've actually signed up for one of them. And there's a few others, though, that I know other friends of mine and other fellow agents have signed up for and said they like. So I'll go ahead and give you my recommendations. And if you've got any other recommendations that I don't mention, go ahead and put that in the chat as well, so people can hear those suggestions. But the first one is blink.me. So I think it's just Blink, but if you go to their website, blink.me, you can get digital business cards. And for those that don't understand what a digital business card is, there's a couple different ways that these digital business cards work. One, you can just kind of like text over a digital business card to somebody. You can email it, you can put it on your social media. It's basically anything that, somebody can easily save as a contact card on their phone. And now some of them kind of take it to the next level. Like the one that I've used is called Popl, popl.co. And it's kind of cool with that service. You can actually like hold your phone up near somebody, and pretty much it's almost like a digital handshake, essentially, where you can send your information, your contact information, over to somebody else just by being near them, and having your phones together. So that's another option there. That's the one that I like, is popl.co. All these services are not super expensive. They're not 100% necessary either, though. I mean, if you're just getting started in your real estate business, I would say there's probably other things you can spend your money on. But if you already, are established, if you're, out there meeting with people pretty often, or if you're in the digital space and you just want people, to have your information easily, then you could definitely look into one. Another one that another agent friend of mine uses is hihello.me. So hihello as one word, .me. You can check that one out. And then the last one is it's linkapp.com. Linkapp.com. So basically Blink, hihello.me, and linkapp.com, they're all pretty similar, from what I've gathered. Popl, I think gives a little bit extra, has a little bit extra features to it, but does cost a little bit more. So it just depends on what you're looking for. But those would be the 4 that if you, wanted to save them, kind of take a look and see which one has the right fit for you, then go check those out. All right, let's see. Chris Adams says he uses Popl. Love it. All right. Good morning, everybody. Good to see everyone. There we go. We got Jorge from Floresville. Good to see you, Jorge. Oh, my mom, Stacy Handy, says, I use Pop Taps. I've never heard of that one. Pop Taps. Maybe we can go look at that one. There we go. Good stuff. Brent Walgren from Lavernia, Texas. Welcome, Brent. Good to see you. Samal from New Jersey. All right, good stuff. We got Estrella, I guess, from Denver, Colorado. Good to see you. And Patricia from San Antonio, Texas. D. Harrington from Chicago. Nora from Corpus. Good morning to all you guys. Thanks for tuning in. All right, here we go. So let's go ahead and jump on to the next question here. Uh, so I guess this person they probably heard my last live stream or one of my videos where I talk about being an introvert. Like, it's funny because a lot of times people see me on YouTube and, or even if you see me out or whatever, and you think like, oh, Kyle must be like an extrovert. He likes video, he's not nervous to get on social media. And it's actually kind of the opposite. I would actually say I'm kind of an introvert. And this question here was, how do you sell homes as an introverted realtor? So kind of a funny question, I guess. I think what helps me, because, I'm not naturally outgoing, in the sense that like I love, just being around tons of people and like that's where I get my energy from. I actually prefer to be kind of on the back end of things, doing work on the, in the dark, so to speak. But, as a realtor, I mean, number one, I mean, you kind of do have to at least put yourself out there to some extent, but I think there's ways that you can go about it, that will, help kind of, enhance your strengths or what you do like to do. So first off, I think, choosing a niche, in real estate and, doing something that you feel comfortable in naturally, that's going to help you first and foremost. If you try and get into real estate and do something that you're not comfortable with doing and you're an introvert, it's going to be pretty difficult, right? So like start with a niche that you feel that you'll be the most comfortable in, or you may already know a lot about. And we'll talk actually a little bit more about niches here later on, because actually that was one of the questions that I got as well. It has to do with niches. I think you got to be real good at creating your unique value proposition, like what makes you unique compared to most other realtors out there. I think, if you can really dial that in and figure out like, if you stood in an elevator with somebody for 15 seconds, and they asked you, what do you do? What do you do? Like, what makes you unique? What would you tell that person? Right. And, because the more you can hone that in and the more you can get that message out there, you'll start to attract people, right? Rather than having to sell them and or prospect, random people. Because I think when when most people say they're introverted realtor, they think of the sense of like, I just don't like cold calling. I don't like rejection and prospecting. Maybe I don't like to go out in person and meet people, all the time. Those are all typically the things that I would think most realtors don't like. But if you had like a willing client, coming to you and wanting to work with you, and you didn't really have to do much as far as, selling them on why they should use you, I think that's where an introverted realtor could sell. You like to go out there and show homes, show properties. Maybe you like to go to get the listing, and, do all of the management after the fact, but like you're just a little nervous of that front end part of it. So the better you build your business as like an attraction-based business versus like a prospecting-based business, I think the better you'll be as an introverted realtor. And so that's where also I'll just plug it. I say it all the time, but I think having good content, creating a content marketing strategy as a realtor, whether that means blogging, whether that means creating a YouTube channel. I think that can help, enhance what you're doing, and it'll also attract people to want to use you and reach out to you versus the other way around. So I think that would also go to your strengths. And then the last way is if you're like, well, I'm going to do Google ads or I'm going to do Facebook ads, but I still just don't really like, the prospecting side of it, calling and that type of thing. You could also look at a service, that does like the outbound prospecting for you if that's not your strengths. There's a service called CallTend. If you ever used CallTend, put that in the comments. Let me know your feedback on it. I've definitely looked into it. I've not personally used it, but I do have some agents that are using it with good results. So if you like CallTend, put that in the comments. Let me know, or if you've heard of it. And but yeah, I mean, you could use a service like CallTend, or you could hire your own inside sales agent. That way, essentially, you are kind of going to be the one that's like in the dark. You're kind of the one that's, maybe setting up the ads, or you are, setting up the content marketing. But then when things start coming in, because typically, especially with online, you're going to have to deal with a lot of stuff. You might, even if your conversion ratio is 5%, that means you got to call 20 people, follow up with 20 people just to get one potential client. And sometimes that can be overwhelming for a lot of people. And so if you have some service or some person that can, do that for you, you can still stay on the back end. And then when something rises to the top and you're ready to work with somebody, then you can start going and working with them. So, all right, let's go ahead and move on to the next one. Best service for Facebook ads. So I'm assuming at this point, you are not wanting to run your own Facebook ads or learn Facebook ads on your own, which, I would, that would be my recommendation, is to try and learn it yourself if you can. I mean, if you have the time and or you're willing to learn something new, because if you're willing to learn it, honestly, Facebook ads is not that difficult. They've made them very simple. And now Facebook has also limited a lot of options. They've actually taken away a lot of things that you could do, just a couple years ago as far as targeting. And so, realistically, the amount of things you can do with it are much less. So there's really not as many ways to mess it up per se. And so, and then typically once you figure out your strategy, like what works with your Facebook ads, like how you want to run them, it's not like you have to, be constantly learning new things or doing new things. I mean, you'll be creating new ads and trying different creatives and trying different headlines, but the general process of setting them up will always pretty much be the same. And so like once you learn it, it's not impossible to keep doing it and or delegate it, to somebody on your team, if you've got a team, to handle it for you. Now, if that's not an option and you want to go outside and you want to hire, a Facebook marketing company, which there's plenty of them. There's a few that I look into that I respect. One of the ones, and this is where I got all my Facebook marketing knowledge from, was Travis Tom over at elevatedrem.com. You should go check out his stuff. He's got a lot of training where he teaches you not only how to do them yourself, but then if you try and learn it yourself and you're like, this is still just not something I want to do or I'm able to do, then you can hire him to run your campaigns for you. And at this point, I believe it's, he's got a team and whatnot. So it's not necessarily Travis that's doing them, but his service is very good. And that's called elevatedrem.com. And the other one is platform.marketing. You can look into them. They also will run Facebook ads specifically for you. And these are separate than Google paid providers. So there's a lot of Google pay-per-click, ad providers as well. So this is, I guess I'm just trying to answer this specifically for Facebook ads. The last one is Lopo. A lot of y'all have probably heard of Lopo. They're going to be on the more expensive side, I would say, typically, but they are a really good service, good value. A lot of agents, get a lot of business from them. They've been around now for a while. So those are some of the ones that I see most often. All right, let me check back into the chat here. We got Mario Gonzalez, San Antonio, Texas. Welcome, Mario. Thanks for jumping on. Josie Woods, Driftwood. And we got Annette from Edinburgh. All right, there we go. Dana Carter, East Bernard. Got Brent saying real estate is a relationship business. Build more relationships, sell more real estate, and attract more agents. There you go. Let's see. We got a question from Mario. He says, Kyle, how do you plan the content creation for YouTube and for Instagram? Thank you. Good question, Mario. So as far as my content creation process, it all starts with keyword research. And so, this was the mistake that I made early on when I first started in YouTube and creating content, even blogging, is that I would just create stuff that, I was, interested in or that I thought was helpful to other people. And a lot of that ended up becoming like a wasted effort. And so now the first thing that I always do before I create any piece of content, because creating a piece of content takes a significant amount of time, is to do the research. Make sure that what you're going to create has search interest, meaning that, there's a lot of tools out there that you can use for this. But I in particular use a tool called Ahrefs. It's on the more expensive end. There's other tools that you can use for keyword research that are less expensive. You can use like Ubersuggest from Neil Patel. You can use KW Finder. That's the one I used to use, way back when. It's a lot less expensive. Doesn't give you as much functionality as Ahrefs. But basically what you do is with any of these keyword tools is you're going to type in what you think is a relevant content idea, right, for your audience. And so if it's buyers and sellers, you're going to think of things that people might be interested in your market. So for instance, like in San Antonio, I'm actually doing this myself where I'm starting to look up, what types of searches are people looking for in my market. And for instance, like if I was going to create a blog post today, I could look at like the top free things to do in San Antonio, Texas, right? Like that's a search. And so I'd throw that into Ahrefs. I'd see what the search volume is, how many searches per month are going on with it. And then also it'll give you a difficulty score, meaning like, in order for you to rank in the top 10 search results on Google, is it going to be super difficult? Is it going to be easy? And, and so like, for instance, it's like on a 100-point scale, and like anything around a 50 is very difficult for a new blog. If it's like under 20, under 15, under 10, then those are definitely ones that you can target. So, but to answer your question, you start with the keyword research, you find some relevant topics to your audience that you can rank for. You don't want to go after things too difficult when you're just getting started. Otherwise, you might create something amazing, but you're still not going to get the traction just because your audience isn't big enough yet. And then once you do that, then, obviously you create an outline of the points that you want to speak about or talk about, and then you flesh it out, right? And you write it out. And there's a little bit more. I mean, of course, too, you want to make sure that what you're talking about is relevant to like what Google already suggests, to some extent. Like Google's, it's an amazing algorithm where they can, search through thousands of blog posts and give you the best 10, right? So obviously those 10 are doing something right. And so, you don't want to go too far outside of what those are already doing. You definitely want to put your own spin on it, but that's where, I'll look at maybe some of the top 5 posts that made it. I'll look at their titles. I'll look at, what's actually their subheadings inside of their posts, just to see like, am I talking about something at least kind of similar to them? And then where I give my own spin is in the paragraphs, right? So then I flesh it out, I publish it, make it into a blog post, turn that into a transcript so that way I can create a YouTube video. And then I can turn that YouTube video into smaller content that I can throw out there on Instagram. So it's a long, there's all sorts of different things that you can do with it. But first off, I definitely recommend by, doing something that is tailored towards search, right? Because Google, YouTube, they're the number 1 and 2 search engines in the world. So if you can get eyeballs from those search engines, you're going to get eyeballs for years to come, right? Whereas like if you just are doing things on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, you got to constantly be creating new stuff because all of your old stuff tends to get, pushed down. It's not going to be as much of a search platform. So, all right, cool. Hope that answered your question, Mario. Let's see. We've got Cynthia's from Southern California, Google Maps, ? I'm not sure what that means, but Diane from Greensboro, North Carolina. How's it going? D. Harrington asks, how far ahead do you plan out your content? Yeah, so I mean, typically I like to have at least about like a week's worth of completed content in the hopper, right? Like where it's already scheduled, it's done, I'm already like a week ahead. But I've got, as far as planned out, like, just to give you an idea, for like, one of my blogs that I'm doing, I've got pretty much, I'd say at least 6 months worth of content ideas, just the keywords essentially. So like, I know what keywords I'm going to go after. Typically, once I've created those or I know which keywords I'm going to go after, I'll make titles for them. So, I'll take the keyword, throw it into Google. I'll see like how some of the titles are most relevant. So like, for instance, if I put in Google, if my keyword was free things to do in San Antonio, I would type that into Google, and then I'd see like, how does Google, sort the first 10? Like, are they list type of posts? Are they like guides that Google likes to put up top? Is it like the 13 best free things to do in San Antonio? If that's the case, then I probably need to structure my title and structure my post or structure my video. Because again, YouTube is different than Google, but there's a lot of similarities. So, if you're going to do it for blogging, chances are it will translate over to video pretty well. And so, I'll just kind of copy that same format where I'm like, I might do 15 free things to do in San Antonio, right? And so I'll come up with the titles because then the title gives me direction of what, I should do with my content. And then at that point, I can just start whenever I get time, start creating my content. But I always want to have at least about a week ahead for my content there. So, All right, there we go. Love it. Thanks, Brent. That's right. No questions are dumb questions. Absolutely. So yeah, put any question you got, guys. Throw it in the chat there, and I will get to it. Whether you're watching on Facebook or if you're watching on YouTube, I am checking them all. So, all right. That being said, I'm going to go back to my other questions here. I was talking about the different niches earlier. Somebody had asked, what are some different niches? Um, and I apologize. I know there's like a huge debate, right? Like people say, is it niche? Is it niche, right? Like I don't even care. It's one of those two. And, and so, but whatever you want to call it, there are a few different ones, and I'll give you some, as far as inspiration or ideas, but I wrote out a few. I see you can be a first-time homebuyer specialist, right? Where like, and when I talk about creating a niche, it's kind of one of those things. Niche is if you like, let's say that, let's take it from a content standpoint, right? If you want to become an expert in it, like that means you need to be like learning everything, every little angle that you can about that. You need to make sure that you've answered all of the questions that somebody in that audience would typically have, right? Like, so you really like, it's not like you just like, a niche isn't something that you just say like, well, that's what I like. I'm the first time home buyer realtor, but like, what are you really doing to do that? Like, do you just help a lot of home buyers because that's just who you get right away when you're a real estate agent? Or are you physically like doing stuff to enhance your brand around that niche? And so that's what I mean about it is like you're going all the way with it, right? You're not just talking about it, but you're doing things. You actively are seeking out those people. You're hanging around those groups. You're finding out where do they gather and whatnot, and helping them. And and so that's one. Airbnb investors. I actually know a lot of, oh, not a lot, but I know a few agents that they specifically, that's their whole business is working with Airbnb investors on like short-term rentals, vacation rentals, that type of thing. Veterans, people that just work with veterans. I know people that work with active military. So, two different niches there, veterans and active military. Luxury, and to define kind of luxury as far as what I see, I think what most people kind of talk about luxury as is 3 times your average price point in your market. So like for instance, in San Antonio, if my average price point is 250, that means that I'm typically serving people that are on average around 750 or more in my market, right? And yours could be different. Like if your average price point's 800,000, luxury might be 2.5 million, right? Like in your area. And by that I mean, like obviously like your branding should reflect that you're a luxury agent. Your videos that you create, just even like how you explain the process of purchasing a luxury property or selling a luxury property, all that stuff has to match up. Expired listings. So like a niche could be like the type of leads that you get, right? Like you could actually, build your business as an expired listings expert, right? Like if you love prospecting on the phone, you love calling expireds, like use that as your marketing. Like tell people like, hey, I help the agents, or I help the sellers who couldn't sell their home the first time around with some other agent, right? Like that's what I specialize in. How good is that if you go to a listing appointment with an expired seller and you tell them like, this is my whole business, right? Like I'm not just some agent who's just, randomly calling you, but this is my business, is to work expired listings. And, and I've helped 50 other expired listings here just this year, right? Like, so that could be your niche right there. For sale by owners, kind of the same thing. Seniors, if you like to work with seniors. Out of state relos, like that's a really helpful one. I mean, you can go so in depth with some of these niches. Like for instance, out of state relos, if you get a lot of out of state relos, which, maybe you're in a market where you get, consistent people moving in, for like they're buying vacation properties, or if you're just getting somewhere like, here in Texas and San Antonio, we get a lot of people moving in from California, or, up in the East Coast, we'll get people moving down to Texas. And so, but when you say that you're doing that, you got to go the whole way, right? Like now create content, or, create something that shows that you are specifically helping those people. And what you can do is teach them what your market is like, right? Like it doesn't have to always, you don't have to go straight for the kill and say like, like, I just want to help you, like, buy or sell a home here. No, like, what's the best Italian food in your market? Where are some of the best activities to take kids? Like help people out, right? Like first and foremost, like don't even think like, oh, I'm trying to sell them a home right here with this type of content that I'm creating. And then you just say, and by the way, if you're considering, moving to this area, because typically, if people are looking for these types of videos, they're looking to move here from somewhere else, then I'd love to work with you, right? And so something like that, right? Like that's how you kind of get into those niches. All right. The other one is new construction. Become the new construction expert. Like you're constantly, your message is talking about different builders, what they offer. The different type of construction that they do. Their warranties. Their pricing. Where they have new land opening up. I mean, everything, right? Like so, if somebody thinks about buying a new construction home, they're gonna think, oh, I need to talk to Mario. I got to talk to Brent. There's no other question in their mind because they know that you've been preaching that message for so long. And then like another one would be historical homes. If you got an area where downtown or something where they sell a lot of historical homes, you could definitely make that your niche and just know everything that there is to know about some of these older neighborhoods and older homes. All right, well, let's see. Patricia asks, will I be posting these links later after the live stream? I'm not sure which links specifically are you asking for, Patricia? And she makes a comment. I was there. I was her realtor when they bought their home. So yeah, absolutely. It's good seeing you. All right, yeah. Let me know which links you're looking for, and I'll see if I can post those up for you. All right. Let's see here. We've got the next one. Oh, lead services. Somebody asks about lead services that you don't pay up front. So this is like, I'm assuming like not like Zillow, not realtor.com, not paying for Facebook ads, not paying for Google leads. Like you just want to have a lead sent to you and then you maybe pay like a referral on the back end. So like more of like a referral follow-up, a referral lead service. And there's three of them that I know. If you know of any that I don't list here, then put them in the comments and I'll read them on here so that way people can find out. But the first one is OpCity. I know a lot of realtors using OpCity, and they have these ones all have like different terms. I think OpCity is like 40% is what you pay them on the back end, as far as a referral fee. Homelight, you can check out Homelight is another one. And then OJO. I don't know if they actually if it's just said like OJO or OHO. I'm not sure, but OJO, you can check that one out. But I think, those are the three that I know about that like agents can get free leads from. But obviously you got to pay them on the back end when the deal closes. And I believe, I know at least with OpCity, you not only do you have to pay them for that deal, but I think if you get like a referral from that or like a repeat buyer from it, repeat seller from their lead, I think it's a 2-year time frame that you still have to pay the referral back to them. But, if you're looking for free leads and you're, I mean, there's really not anything to lose there, as long as you're willing to spend your time working those leads, then those are definitely some options for you. So, but put it in the chat if you see any more or hear any more that I didn't list just then. All right. Best lead follow-up service. So this is, I'm assuming maybe like a CRM system, that you're trying, like if you're generating a bunch of leads, how do you best follow up with them? And from there, well, first off, I would say if you're with a brokerage that provides you a CRM system, use it. Try and start there. I've kind of at this point I've been in the business now for I guess 14 years, and I've used almost every CRM that you can imagine. And I feel like, you're either like a CRM person or you're kind of not. Like you either like to use them or you don't. And I mean, I know a lot of agents that like, they swap CRM systems like, their socks, and they just think that whatever the next CRM is, it's going to be like the magic ticket. And then they start using it and, and it might use it for a little while. They're excited about it, but then it just kind of fizzles away. I think at some point you just have to, plant your flag and say, like, I'm going to use this one, I'm not going to switch, like, and just use whatever's available to you. Try and save, as much cost as you can. until you prove out that like, hey, you're actually getting good use out of the CRM. Once you start finding limitations to your CRM because you're using it so much and it's not allowing you to do something, then it might be time to switch or find something different. But if you get one that's provided by your brokerage, I'd say start there, because that way you can save money, and the money you save you could invest into other things like paid leads, or reinvest it into your sphere of influence, or whatever type of advertising that you're doing, marketing that you're doing. And so that would be my thing there, is just use what you got. And then, but if you've also found that like maybe just a CRM isn't for you, like this actually kind of, it's funny enough, but like for me, I have CRM systems that I use almost more for like my team and to kind of track some stuff. But me personally, I'm more of just like a spreadsheet person, right? Like I love to be able to just kind of manipulate my data how I need it. And although I can't maybe be as effective with it, like in the sense of like emailing straight from the system, or calling straight from the system, or logging notes as easily, or things like of that nature, which is typically what you want to use a CRM for. I actually just prefer stuff to be on like a spreadsheet, right? And then I can kind of filter the data how I need. I can sort it. So like you might just try that, right? Like, and I actually use a program called Notion, which you can use it for free. But it's like a spreadsheet on steroids. Like you literally can do so many, you can break it out into a bunch of different views. You can add things into kind of like a calendar view as well. So like if you like to see things on a calendar, there is a ton of things that you can use Notion for. So I'm kind of all like in a big Notion rabbit hole right now. I've been changing everything over that I had on Google Sheets and stuff into Notion. I've got all my team documents on there, everything. I mean, you can use it for so much. And so that might be a solution for you, especially if you don't want to spend a whole lot of money, or if you just like to be able to see everything. And then, for the most part, if I do need to like add, like I'll have like an email list. I use Aweber to send out emails. So I can upload my spreadsheet into Aweber, and then I can blast out emails that way. But for the most part, I like to just be able to see all of my leads in one spot, and then I can just, kind of go through them one by one. And so, I mean, if you're generating hundreds of leads a month, that's probably not going to work. But for what I'm doing, I'm more about quality and not quantity right now, with what I'm pursuing as far as, building out my team. I don't need to generate, thousands of agent leads right now, right, to be successful. But if I can get, 40 a month or 30 a month, which, I can kind of manage that myself, then I'm good doing it with just with a database, or some people just use pen and paper, right? Whatever works for you. But now if you're going to scale things up and you got to get a lot of leads, then yeah, you probably do need to figure out a good CRM option. And so for that, I got a couple that I recommend. I'll go from kind of the cheapest option to the most expensive. So I already talked about using the one your brokerage provides. That's free, right? If you can make that work. Notion, again, free, but not as much functionality. Now, getting to be a little bit more expensive, but still not super expensive. These are just CRM systems. These are not like front end websites as well. They can hook up to front end websites, but it would be additional. But RealVolve, RealVolve, RealVolve. And then you got Follow Up Boss. I love Follow Up Boss. That's a huge one for me. You can connect it, integrate that with just pretty much any website provider out there for real estate agents. And then if you want to get into like the all-in-one systems where you've got the CRM system and you've got the front end website, you could look into KV Core. That's the one that we get here at EXP. That's one that I use for my buyer seller business. You've got Chime. And then you've also got Boomtown, which is on the very expensive side, on the most expensive side, but it's worth it. I mean, if you're willing to pay that type of money, if you got a team, I'd say it's a great option, but it is on the very expensive side. So I mean, you could work your way up, just use a spreadsheet or a piece of paper until you hit the limitations of that, right? And then move up to a free or close to free option like Follow Up Boss. I think would be a great next step. Find out if you ever reach the limits of Follow Up Boss. I mean, really, once you get to Follow Up Boss, you actually can do so much with it. You can text out of the system, you can email out of the system, so many different things that you'll be able to do with it. But you might find some limitations. You can hook up BombBomb to it, so you can send like video emails. So I mean, a lot of this stuff, you just gotta. It might not work 100% the way that you want it. Like that's the thing. I actually had this conversation with an agent the other day. It's like he wanted like, KV Core to do this exact specific thing. And it's like, I mean, I get that, like, it may not do that exact thing, but it does, 99% of everything else. And like, you can just, tweak whatever that one thing was that you wanted it to do. And because then you'll move over to another one and that might do 99% of the other stuff, and it'll do that one thing you wanted, but then you'll realize it doesn't do something else, right? Like, so there's no perfect CRM out there. You just have to try and like, figure out, don't think that like, oh, like this thing that it doesn't do, if I could just do this, well, then I'll just be so much more busy. It's like, no, or, I'll have so much more business. It's not how it works. I mean, if you just use the CRM for what it's capable of, following up with people, automating some of your marketing follow-up, I mean, that's what they're there for. And that's going to be, the majority of what, the benefit of that CRM system is. You just got to use it though. That's the biggest thing. All right. Let's see here. We got a question on YouTube. Let's see. I'll add this to the broadcast here. Ron asks, hey, Kyle, for example, I want to have my niche for first-time homebuyers. Does EXP offer training to agents specializing on first-time homebuyers? Absolutely, they do. You need to go to expcloud.com and for a full list of all the training that they've got on there, and check out the icon series. A lot of times, I mean, it's not like every day. It's not like, they even have something necessarily, like a series that's, that you can go into on demand and watch it. But that's a pretty common topic that you'll see discussed. And so that's a training that you can go to and check out. Or you can go into Workplace, Facebook Workplace for EXP agents, and go into the EXP University group. And that's where they store a lot of the saved trainings, and just do a search in there for first-time home buyers and see what comes up from there. And so a lot of that will be training, past recordings of training, talking about, agents that talk about first-time home buyers and how they work with them. So, all right, good question. All right, Jeff says Notion is the bomb. Oh yeah. All right, let's see. We got, Jeff says the best CRM is the one you'll use. 100%, 100%. All right. I think I can hear. Let me see if I can do this. There we go. I've been wanting to do that for so long. I don't know why. That's this. Whenever I get a good quote, that'll be something I have to do. All right. Let's see here. Next one we've got is, we talked about that. Oh, transaction. Somebody's asked about transaction management services. So a couple options there. As far as like for transaction management, if you're like not wanting to do it yourself and you want to hire a service to do it for you, which I do recommend, you've heard me probably speak about that before. I definitely think, outsourcing your transaction management is one of the best things you can do. I mean, I can remember when I was doing my own transaction management, and when you start doing, even like, a consistent 2 to 3 closings a month, so you're at the 20, 30, 40 deal stage of your career where you're doing that annually. I would always remember like going out on a weekend or something, showing a bunch of properties, or maybe it'd be during the week. Like, I went on appointments, I'd get home at like 4:30, 5:30, 6 o'clock. And, and typically at that point, your family, it's like, they want to, they think you're done. You're like, you're home, you're ready to hang out or kind of chill. But then it's like, I'd have to go up to my office and do another like hour or 2 hours worth of just catching up on paperwork. And I hated that feeling. Like, I hated having to do that. And so that's why, getting a transaction management service, one, will just make your life as a real estate agent so much better. But then two, it'll help you scale. I mean, if you're not spending all that time doing transaction management yourself, there's so many other things that you could be doing, prospecting and that type of thing. Like, when people ask, they're like, well, how do you do everything? How do you come up with all this content, Kyle? How do you, do X, Y, and Z? It's, typically because I try and ensure that I have as little time like doing things that are not either working or spending time with my family. Like, those are the only two things that I like prioritize, right? And so everything else, like cutting my grass, I guess I pay somebody, because I look at like how long, even if I kind of might enjoy doing it, I'm like, man, that's going to take me, 2 hours, 3 hours to do. If I look at how much my time is worth, which, for anybody who's not done this exercise, I highly recommend you do it. But let's say that, I earned $300,000 this last year. You divide that by 2,000, right? Because that's typically how many hours people will work in a year. As realtors, we probably work more than that, but let's just say on, to make it easy to do 2,000 hours, that means my time's worth $150 an hour, right? And if you're making $100,000, that means that, your time is worth $50 an hour, right? And so then I'm like, man, if I was going to cut my grass, that's 3 hours. That's like I just spent $450. Whereas if I could pay somebody, $85 to cut my grass, I might as well do that, unless I just get extreme joy from doing it. And so I just always look at everything from that lens, and that way I have more time, because we all have the same amount of time, right, in life. And well, not in life total, but like in a given day, I guess you could say. And so in a given day, so we all have the same amount of time for that. It's like, you need to prioritize your time that you invest in your business, because an hour that you spend, mowing the grass is 1 hour less that you could have been doing prospecting or whatever, right? So you got to figure out what your time is worth, and anything that, you're doing that you could hire somebody to do for less, it's worth doing that. And so getting back to the answer on that, I definitely would recommend Transactly. That's like a nationwide, so that's like a pretty easy solution for pretty much everybody watching this video. Is you can go out and check out Transactly. You'll pay them $95 annual fee, and then they'll be able to match you up with transaction coordinators that they've trained, or that use their process. And typically the prices for like a particular file will be about $300 to $350 or so. They also have a free service where you don't pay anything, but you can only do one closing with it, just to kind of try it out. And then that costs $350 for that one file. There are some things that make it cost a little bit more, but on average, that's about what you're going to pay. And but then if you are their pro member, you pay the $95 annually, you get a slight discount on their transaction managers. And and of course, everybody has mixed reviews. I would say in general, people with Transactly, it's more positive for sure than negative. But anytime that you outsource and you give your your business to somebody else, it can be hard, right, if they don't do things exactly the way that you're used to doing them. And so you might have your own opinions of the service, but in general, I would say they're very good. Their customer service is very good, and I think that it's worthwhile for every agent, not just if you're like a team leader, not just if you're doing like a lot of deals per year, like even as like a starting out agent, if you've got the money to invest in it, which it's not a ton, I would definitely recommend getting that off of your plate as soon as possible. So you got that. The other options that you've got is, you can use a service like SkySlope or Dotloop. That's not going to be like a full out transaction manager who's going to contact your clients and all that kind of stuff, but it will make the process a lot easier. Most brokerages, that's what they offer, is they're going to give you some transaction management service just to make sure that you're staying on track with the file. It makes things a lot simpler. So that way, even though it will take you still time to do it, it's going to be usually less time once you've learned those softwares and you're kind of used to doing it. Then the next one is Virtudesk. This is one where basically you can hire virtual assistants that are specifically trained for transaction management. And it's so, here you might pay a per file, or you could even pay like an hourly, depending on how much you want to work with this transaction manager. And so you can look at Virtudesk. You can also look at My Outdesk. These are all ones. Or if you really just want to hire your own person virtually and train them and all that kind of stuff, you could just go straight up on Upwork and look for virtual assistants on there. All right. Let's see here. How would you recommend connecting with lenders in your area as a new agent? That's what Patricia asks here. Good question there. So here's the thing. I mean, I know typically, especially once you start to get more business, lenders will be lining up to try and work with you. But when you're new, they don't know of you. But I promise you, they still want to work with you. So they might not be calling you. Like I get calls from lenders all the time trying to work with me. But when you're new, they still are going to want to work with you. So I think the first thing you got to do is you got to find out who the lenders that you want to work with are, right? Like ask around in some community groups, like realtor groups in your area, of like, hey, who are some of the most service oriented, mortgage lenders that I should know? Like who has, access to a lot of different programs. And that's the other thing too, is you'll probably have multiple lenders that you work with. Like for me, I've got a lender that I work with if I need somebody that can do a portfolio loan, if I need land loan, if I need, just your traditional loan, if I need somebody that can do like down payment assistance type of stuff. So like I've got a few different lenders, so it's not like a one size fits all, but you might just want to ask like, hey, who do you like, for this type of a product? Who do you like for this type of a product? And then go talk to those lenders yourself and, see who it is that you build, who you like as far as relationship wise. Um, and then, if you want to like partner with them further, like, obviously asking and seeing if they're willing to do any kind of like co-marketing sponsorships or things like that, that can obviously transpire as well. So, all right. So let's see here. I think there we go. Yeah, Facebook or any, Brent says Facebook or any other social media has realtor groups. Yep, start there asking for recommendations. That's exactly it. Let's see. Cool. What about with builders? All right, so that's Nora asks, what about how do you get started working with builders? There I would say one, start with builders that are in your area already. So like, you'll probably know your neighborhood and around your neighborhood. Find the closest area where there's, a good amount of new construction going on and just start, learning about their product. Even if you don't have clients right away, going into their models, getting to know the sales consultants, getting to know their product. And then when you do start having clients, the more you can bring people in and, they see you doing that, the better. And then, coming from a new home sales experience background, like I actually did new home sales for about 5 years. I will tell you, it's very surprising how few realtors, will actually try and build relationships with the new home sales consultants. Like, I mean, they'll show up when they have clients and that kind of thing. But like, I'm talking like, you can bring a coffee, you could bring them lunch, these new home sales consultants, and that'll like stand out a lot to them because it really doesn't, there's not a whole lot of agents doing that. And to where you actually get to know them on a personal level and then offer to start doing some open houses for them, like on their inventory homes, where you can, host open their inventories. And typically, depends on your market and like the average price point and stuff. But like if you were going to do this strategy, I would recommend, finding something that's like at or below your average price point in your market because you'll get more leads typically. A lot of times, if you start working the upper end of new construction home builders, luxury home builders, that type of thing, the leads that come into those environments will usually have realtors already. And so, you're better off. You'll get more traffic, number one, and you'll get more traffic that don't have realtors. Number two, at like your average price point home builders or less than average price point. So maybe start there, build a relationship with the new home sales consultants, do their open houses when they can, if you can. And then who knows? Sometimes even a new construction agent, like I remember back in the day, I had a realtor that I really trusted, and I'd have clients come in without a realtor, without representation, and for one reason or another, I'd say, hey, maybe you need to talk to this person first, and I would have somebody reach out, and that person would end up getting onto the deal because they'd end up representing them. That or like if they have a house to sell and they need to sell a home, if I knew a realtor that always did a great job, I would feel much more comfortable handing that person over to that realtor than just to somebody random or somebody that my company would recommend. And so, yeah, so I mean, those are all ways that you can do it, but it's all about building that relationship, Nora, and focus on, you don't have to be the one that works the entire city, but focus on, a neighborhood with maybe 8 builders in it, or maybe a couple different neighborhoods that have, 10 to 15 or something like that, right? And get to be real familiar with their product, start like talking about it on social media, making videos about it, all that kind of stuff. All right, let's see here. I've got, I guess, one more question that I've got here that I'll answer from somebody that had asked it. And then if anybody's got another one that they want to put in the comments, I probably have time for that. But let's see. Somebody asked, where would I invest $1 million in right now? And I kind of like this question. I've answered this question before, but I don't see this answered quite this way too often, which I think is, it's kind of sad in a way. But if I had $1 million right now, just dropped in my lap, where would I put that money today? First off, I think the number one answer is I would invest it again in myself. What I mean by that is Basically I've already, like right now, I already invest heavily in my own business. So like if I make, $500,000 in a year, that doesn't mean $500,000 hits my bank account. Typically, I invest usually, I'd say 30 or 40% of that right back into my business. And what I mean by that is like, if I want more content, right? If I want to create more content, I got to pay people, right? Like I got to reinvest that money and pay writers. I got to pay video editors. I got to pay, people that create thumbnails, all this type of stuff. So I'd reinvest a good chunk of that money um, into into myself, right? Into my business. And maybe that means like maybe you need to, pay for a course or, coaching or something like that. However that is, I mean, I think that would be the first thing is invest that money back into yourself. Typically, as long as you know that you're a go-getter, um, you're hustling, you're working hard. I mean, that's going to be the best investment you can make on that money versus putting it anywhere else, some other random stock or cryptocurrency or whatever. I'll bet on myself all day long versus throwing that money somewhere else because that's all an investment is, right? Like it's a bet basically. It's you're betting on whatever you're putting that money in that it's going to return you more money, right? So how confident are you in your own actions and your own thoughts, all that kind of stuff? Um, so let's see here. We've got the next one that I would invest in would be down payment on an Airbnb, a vacation rental. That's the next thing that I want to put a little bit of my money in, but I wouldn't put all $1 million in it. I wouldn't go buy it cash. I would take, 20, 25%, put that down on a vacation rental property somewhere that my family can get some use out of, but I can also make some money, cash flow wise. I think that would be the next form. And then whatever's left over, I'm a huge fan of Simple Path to Wealth. It's a book by J.L. Collins. If you've not read it, you definitely should check it out. But it basically, I can kind of summarize that whole book. It tells you to invest pretty much any of your savings invested in the Vanguard Mutual Fund VTSAX, which is basically the total stock market index fund. And that's what I do. It's basically, it's pretty boring. It's not, it doesn't, rise a bunch but you'd also lose a bunch all in one sitting. And it's just, over the long period of time, like he does studies where he talks about over, the lifetime of the stock market, all this kind of stuff, just investing in a simple, low cost, Vanguard mutual fund is going to outperform pretty much any other strategy out there. And so read that book, Simple Path to Wealth by J.L. Collins. It's a really good book. And that's all my questions. Let me see. I'm going to jump back into some of you guys' questions because I see here there's some questions in the chat. Mario asks, he says, Kyle, imagine you are a brand new agent again. What would you do to get started? Thanks again. Good question. So so I would say, if I was brand new, just kind of getting dropped into real estate, but knowing what I know now, essentially. But let's even assume that maybe I don't even have like a sphere of influence. I don't have, past clients, nothing. I don't have, even past anybody, right? Like maybe I just am in a whole new market too. If that were me, the answer is it's gonna depend on two things. One is, do I have some money or do I not? If I have some money, I would highly, jumpstart my business with some paid lead generation. And for me, it would be in Google pay-per-click. I would learn how to do pay-per-click myself because again, just like Facebook, it's not super difficult to learn. And once you learn it, it's like pretty much the same. You got to do the same thing over and over. It's not like a whole bunch of learning you got to continually do. So I would do Google pay-per-click versus Facebook. I would run it myself. I would try and spend, anywhere from $500 to $1,000 a month. I think that would give me enough to start getting at least 1 to 2 deals a month pretty consistently after a few months. And, and then I would start going to town. And then, I mean, that's kind of how I would start it. If it were me, if I did not have money, I think at that point I would start just doing open houses. And when I talk about open houses, I would do them 3 to 5 times a week, not just like once per weekend or something like that. I mean, I would be doing 3 to 5 of them per week. I'd be finding agents that have listings in my target neighborhood. I would still pick a niche. So like it might be, a radius of 5 miles and, a little bit smaller if you could, 3 miles, or maybe it's just one neighborhood. Like the old neighborhood I used to live in was Timberwood Park and here in San Antonio, and there was like 1,200 homes in there. And so like literally that one neighborhood could be more than enough. And I would find any new listing that was listed in Timberwood. I'd reach out to the agent, try and see if I could get permission from that agent and their broker to do an open house on the listing. And I would try and do an open house on every single listing that opened in that neighborhood. And so, I mean, that way I'd have custom branded signs. So my main investment there would be maybe a few $100s to get some custom branded signs. I would door knock the listings around it. So, that way they can see, and I would invite them to the open house. It doesn't have to be like super scary to door knock. You could just say, hey, I'm hosting the open house down the road here at, 11 o'clock. Just want to invite you. I'm going to have, it open just for neighbors from 11 to noon. Then it's open to the general public from noon to 2, noon to 3, whatever. And that way it's like, you get to meet some of these people. They're going to see you in that neighborhood all the time if you're trying to do every listing. So then you're going to get people that just show up specifically to meet to meet you. And that's a pretty free way to do it. So you can get listings that way from door knocking and from neighbors showing up to your open houses. And you can also get a lot of buyers that way from the people that are on the streets that are actually looking for properties that don't have a realtor. But a lot of realtors say, oh yeah, I'll do an open house, but it's like, they might do one every other week, one every, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. If you are like going to be, the expert, if you're going to like make that a core pillar of your business, I mean, you got to really do open houses. And so that means, you're doing one on Saturday, you're doing one on Sunday, and then you're doing them, a couple evenings or maybe an evening, a Thursday night, something like that, open house throughout the week. You're, prospecting with the agents the rest of the week. So for me, that's what I would do. I think, if I had money, if I didn't have money, those would be kind of the two options that I would go towards. Again, I'm not like a big outbound prospector. So, that's where I would rather, if you're like good on the phone, you don't mind it, then I think maybe a different option for you could be like calling Red X, or getting Red X and calling expired and for sale by owners. That's pretty inexpensive, but you got to put in the work and the effort. I just don't prefer that, too much. So I'd rather call leads that have registered on my website because it's maybe more of like a warm lead than a cold lead. Or I'd rather come, work with people that are coming into my open house because it's kind of a little bit more of a warm lead at that point too. So cool. All right, looks like I got one more question. We've got Josie asks, what advice would you give to a brand new agent? Oh, I guess I think this is hopefully my question that I answered to Mario answers this one. What advice would you give to a brand new agent? And what is the best place to focus your energy and time as a new agent? One thing I'll say it's a little bit different there is just, don't spread yourself too thin. Like I say, as a new agent, it's so important that you do one thing really, really well. Don't try and do like 5 things somewhat well, right? Like if you're going to do open houses, make that your core pillar until you start to, become an expert at it. And then you can either delegate it because you don't want to lose what you built up, delegate it out to other, if you got team members at this point or whatever, then you can delegate it out or, create systems around it, something like that. But then you want to add on top of that pillar that you built, right? But you don't want to start adding on top of pillars when, you haven't even perfected the first thing, right? So many agents, they get too distracted by so many things, and then they're not effective at anything. And so it's like, if you're going to do Google ads, become the expert, right? Make your core strategy, not only getting the Google leads, but making sure that your systems are set up to follow up with the Google leads, all that kind of stuff. So anyways, that would be my deal there. Yeah, there we go. Jorge asks, how do you deal with a difficult client? I don't know if I can answer that one. Just, I might need a whole call for that one. No, but in general, Brent says it's okay to fire them as a client, which is true. Sometimes you do have to get to that point where not necessarily that you fire them as a client, but you like let them know, like, at this point, like, hey, that, don't be afraid to lose them as a client, like stick to your ground. And if you do lose them as a client, so be it, right? Like that's what you have to kind of do sometimes with difficult clients. If they're just difficult because, they're picky or whatever, some of that you just have to see, like, are you willing to manage it, manage some of that. But I would say one, a lot of it can be dealt with by setting proper expectations. So, having a conversation with them about what's acceptable, what's not. And if they say, well, that's not acceptable for us, well, then you just say, hey, well, then, maybe we're not a good fit to work together. I'm happy to refer you, to 3 other agents here that you can look into. Right. So if you're willing to pass it off, I think you have to kind of get to that point where like, you're not so afraid to lose one particular deal because no one deal is worth either your credibility if this person's going to leave you terrible reviews and they're just going to be like the worst client ever, it may not be worth it even, right, for that one deal. Or even just your sanity, right? Like to enjoy what you do. It's not worth just working with difficult clients. All right. Well, there we go, guys. Well, hey, I see some good questions still coming in. One thing I will ask is hit that like button again if you haven't already, if you got some value out of this call, and definitely plan to show up for next week. Same time, Tuesday, 11 a.m. Central Time. I am going to set up the call here right after this one. So if you want to set a reminder on it, you definitely can. And if you're watching this back on the replay, definitely still put your questions into the comments there. And I will answer them. That's how I kind of fuel my questions for the next week's chat. So still put your questions in the comments, even if you're watching this on replay. And I will, for next call, for next Tuesday, those will be the questions that I get started with. So, all right, guys. Well, hey, thank you so much for tuning in. It was great being here with you. I hope everybody has a great week, and we'll see you guys next Tuesday. Take care, everybody.